I woke up to the sound of machines beeping and the antiseptic smell of a hospital room filling my nostrils. My abdomen felt like someone had taken a sledgehammer to it, which wasn't far from the truth considering the emergency appendectomy I'd just endured. The morphine made everything feel distant and surreal, like watching my life through a fog. Maren sat beside my bed, perfectly composed as always. Her blonde hair was pulled back in that severe bun she wore to board meetings, and she was scrolling through her phone with the same clinical detachment she used when firing employees at her HR firm. "You're awake," she said without looking up from her screen. No warmth, no relief, just a statement of fact. "Yeah, barely." My voice came out as a croak. "How long was I out?" 6 hours for surgery, another 4 in recovery." She finally looked at me, and something in her blue eyes made my stomach drop. It wasn't concern or love. It was the cold calculation I'd seen her use on corporate rivals. "Maren, what's wrong? You look like—" "I'm leaving you, Felix." The words hit me like a physical blow. "I've withdrawn everything from our joint accounts. I'm flying to Paris tonight with Derek." Derek, her ex-boyfriend from college, the smooth-talking finance guy who'd been sniffing around our marriage for months under the guise of catching up with old friends. "You're joking." But even as I said it, I knew she wasn't. Maren never joked about anything, especially not money. "I left enough cash for 3 days of groceries and your prescriptions. After that, you're on your own." She stood up, smoothing her skirt with mechanical precision. "No one will help you. I've made sure of that." The machines around me seemed to beep faster as my heart rate spiked. "Maren, you can't be serious. I just had surgery. I can't even walk properly. You'll figure it out. You always do." She picked up my phone from the bedside table, and before I could react, smashed it against the floor. The screen shattered into a spider web of broken glass. "Don't try to contact me." I watched her walk toward the door, her heels clicking against the linoleum with the same rhythm as a countdown timer. At the doorway, she paused. "Oh, and Felix? I've been planning this for months. Every late night at the office, every business trip, every time I said I was at the gym, I was with Derek. We've been laughing about how clueless you were." The door swung shut behind her, and I was alone with the beeping machines and the crushing weight of betrayal. Through the window, I watched her climb into Derek's silver BMW and drive away, without looking back. But as the morphine fog began to clear, something else emerged. A cold, calculating anger that felt surprisingly familiar. Maren thought she was so smart, so thorough in her planning. She had no idea what she'd just unleashed. I'd spent 15 years as a tech consultant, solving problems that seemed impossible, finding weaknesses in systems that appeared bulletproof. I'd also spent my 20s in boxing rings, learning that the best fighters weren't always the strongest. They were the ones who could think 3 moves ahead while taking a beating. Maren had just made the biggest mistake of her life. She thought she knew me, thought I was the same pushover who'd been making excuses for her coldness for the past 2 years. But she'd never seen me when I was truly motivated. I reached for the call button with my good hand. Time to start making some phone calls. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The nurse who answered my call was a tired-looking woman in her 50s named Janet. She had kind eyes and the sort of no-nonsense attitude that comes from years of dealing with difficult patients. "I need to use a phone," I told her. "It's an emergency." "Honey, visiting hours are almost over and you just had major surgery. You need to rest." "Please, my wife just left me here with no way to contact anyone. I need to call my brother." Something in my voice must have convinced her because she wheeled over a phone cart and plugged it into the wall jack. "5 minutes," she said. "Then you need to sleep." I dialed Alex's number from memory. My brother was 3 years younger than me but had always been the responsible one. Law degree from Harvard, corner office at a prestigious firm, the kind of guy who planned his retirement at age 30. Felix? Jesus, how did the surgery go? Maren said you were still unconscious. Maren lied. Listen carefully because I don't have much time. I quickly explained what had happened, watching Janet pretend not to eavesdrop while checking my IV. She can't just take everything, Alex said. There are laws. Forget the law. I need you to activate the contingency plan. Silence on the other end. 2 years ago, when Maren's behavior first started changing, I'd asked Alec to help me set up some financial safeguards. Nothing illegal, just smart asset protection that any good consultant would recommend. Maren thought I was too trusting, too naive about money. She was wrong. Are you sure about this? Alec asked. She smashed my phone and told me she's been cheating for months, I'm sure. Okay, I'll make the calls tonight, but Felix, once we do this, there's no going back. Good. I don't want to go back. After hanging up, I lay in the hospital bed, staring at the ceiling tiles and thinking about the past year. All the signs I'd ignored or explained away. Maren's sudden interest in yoga classes that never seemed to make her more flexible, business dinners that lasted until midnight, the way she'd started sleeping on the far edge of our king-size bed like I had some contagious disease. The morphine was wearing off, and the pain in my abdomen was getting sharper. But it was nothing compared to the clarity that was emerging. For the first time in months, I knew exactly what I needed to do. Janet came back to check on me around 10 p.m. How are you feeling, hun? Like my wife just destroyed my life. She sat down in the chair Maren had vacated. Want to talk about it? I found myself telling her everything. The affair, the money, the calculated cruelty of her timing. Janet listened without judgment, occasionally shaking her head. Some people, she said when I finished, think they can treat others like garbage just because they have the opportunity. But what goes around comes around. I'm counting on it. The next morning brought the first fruits of Alec's work. Maren's passport had been flagged for suspicious activity. Apparently, someone had reported it stolen. Her credit cards were frozen pending fraud investigation. And most satisfying of all, her company's HR department had received an anonymous tip about an employee destroying personal property on hospital grounds, complete with security footage. I learned all this from Derek himself, who called the hospital in a panic. Felix, you need to call off whatever you're doing, he said, when Janet reluctantly brought me the phone. Maren's in trouble. I have no idea what you're talking about, Derek. I'm stuck in a hospital bed, remember? Don't play games. Her passport's flagged, her cards don't work, and her boss wants to see her first thing Monday morning. Sounds like someone's having a bad day. Maybe she should have thought about that before abandoning her husband after surgery. Look, we can work something out. I hung up. Janet was grinning. That felt good, didn't it? She said. Better than the morphine. But my satisfaction was short-lived. An hour later, a hospital administrator appeared with a clipboard and a grim expression. Mr. Rord, I'm afraid there's been a problem with your insurance coverage. It appears your policy was canceled 2 days ago. The appendectomy, the hospital stay, the medications, all of it was going to cost me $45,000. Money I didn't have, thanks to Maren's financial ambush. I stared at the administrator's sympathetic face and felt something shift inside me. The old Felix would have panicked, would have called Maren begging for help. But the old Felix was gone, carved away along with my infected appendix. I'll need a payment plan, I said calmly. Of course, we can work something out. After he left, I called Alec again. Phase 2, I said. Felix, maybe we should... Phase 2, now. If Maren wanted to play hardball, I'd show her what a real game looked like. I discharged myself from the hospital against medical advice on Friday morning. The stitches pulled with every step, and the pain medication made me dizzy, but I needed to get home and assess the damage. My neighbor Rowan was waiting in the parking lot with his beat-up pickup truck. He was a good guy who'd gotten himself into trouble with a DUI last year. Trouble I'd helped him navigate by connecting him with Alec and paying his legal fees. Sometimes investments in people pay dividends. "Man, you look terrible," he said as I climbed carefully into the passenger seat. "I feel worse. Thanks for picking me up." "No problem. I owe you big time." He glanced at me as we pulled out of the hospital parking lot. "Your brother told me what happened. That's messed up, even for Maren." Rowan had never liked my wife. He was a mechanic with grease under his fingernails and beer in his refrigerator, everything Maren considered beneath her social aspirations. But he was loyal and discreet, qualities worth more than all her networking connections. "It gets worse," I said, and filled him in on the insurance situation. 45 grand? Jesus. What are you going to do? Make her wish she'd never met Derek? My house looked the same from the outside, a modest, two-story colonial in a middle-class neighborhood that Maren had always considered temporary. But inside, the evidence of her betrayal was everywhere. The guest bedroom had been converted into some kind of romantic staging area. Candles on the nightstand, expensive lingerie in the drawers, a bottle of champagne in the mini-fridge I'd installed last Christmas. The champagne was the same brand Derek had brought to our anniversary dinner 6 months ago. In our bedroom, I found the real treasure, Maren's laptop, carelessly left behind in her rush to catch a flight that would never take off. She'd always been paranoid about her digital privacy, but apparently not paranoid enough. Her email was still logged in. 2 years of correspondence with Derek laid out like a roadmap of deception. The affair had started innocently enough, old friends reconnecting on social media, but it had escalated quickly into something ugly and calculating. The worst part wasn't the explicit messages or the photos. It was the way they talked about me. "Felix is so clueless," Maren had written. "He actually believes I'm working late. Sometimes I think he wants to be deceived." Derek's responses were even more brutal. "Guy's a pushover. No wonder you got bored. When we're in Paris, you won't have to pretend anymore." I screenshotted everything and uploaded it to a secure cloud drive. Then I started digging deeper. Maren's browser history revealed months of planning, flight bookings, hotel reservations, even research on divorce laws in France. She'd been building an exit strategy while I was working 60-hour weeks to pay for the lifestyle she demanded. But she'd made one crucial error. She'd saved all her passwords in the browser, her social media accounts, her company email, even her banking information. It was like she'd handed me the keys to her entire life. I started with the small stuff, changed her Netflix password, canceled her gym membership, updated her LinkedIn profile to include some unflattering but technically accurate information about her management style. Then I moved on to bigger targets. Maren's company prided itself on ethical leadership and family values. Their website featured smiling photos of diverse employees and testimonials about work-life balance. They probably wouldn't appreciate learning that their HR director had abandoned her husband in a hospital to run off with a married man. I crafted an anonymous email to the company's ethics hotline, complete with screenshots of Maren's more damaging messages and a detailed timeline of her affair. I made sure to emphasize how she'd used company resources, email, phone, even business trips, to facilitate her relationship with Derek. The security footage from the hospital was even better. Maren smashing my phone was captured in high definition from 3 different angles. I edited together a short video that clearly showed her face and actions, then submitted it to her company's HR department with a note about employee conduct and potential liability issues. By Saturday afternoon, my phone, Rowan had helped me get a new one, was buzzing with panicked messages from Derek. "You're making a mistake," one text read. "Maren's career is everything to her." "Then she should have thought about that before," I replied. "We can pay you back. Just stop this." "Stop what? I'm recovering from surgery, remember?" The next message made me smile. "We're stuck at the airport. They won't let us on the plane." I called Alec to share the good news. The passport flag worked perfectly, he said. TSA pulled them out of line for additional screening. By the time they sort it out, their flight will be long gone. What about the credit cards? Frozen solid. The fraud alert triggered when someone tried to buy 2 first-class tickets to Paris on the same day the cardholder was reportedly in the hospital. You're a genius. I'm a lawyer. There's a difference. But even as I celebrated these small victories, I knew this was just the beginning. Maren had spent months planning my destruction. She deserved something more creative than a few inconveniences. That evening, I created a new social media account under a fake name and started following everyone in Maren's professional network. Her colleagues, her clients, her industry contacts, all the people who knew her as a polished executive and devoted wife. Then I began sharing some interesting content. Nothing defamatory, nothing that could get me in legal trouble. Just publicly available information about the importance of ethical leadership and the consequences of abandoning family responsibilities. I also started a blog called Lessons from a Hospital Bed and began documenting my recovery process. I wrote about the challenges of navigating the healthcare system alone, the financial stress of unexpected medical bills, and the emotional impact of betrayal during vulnerable moments. I never mentioned Maren by name, but anyone who knew our situation would understand exactly what I was describing. The blog gained followers quickly. Apparently, stories of spousal abandonment resonated with more people than I'd expected. By Sunday night, Derek's messages had taken on a desperate tone. Please, Maren's boss wants to see her tomorrow morning. She's terrified. She should be, I typed back. This is what consequences look like. I went to bed that night with my laptop beside me, monitoring the digital fallout of my campaign. Maren's carefully constructed professional image was cracking, and I'd barely gotten started. Tomorrow would bring new opportunities for creative problem solving. After all, I was a consultant. Finding elegant solutions to complex problems was what I did best. Monday morning brought the call I'd been expecting. Maren's voice was strained, all her usual composure gone. Felix, we need to talk. I'm listening. I was sitting in my kitchen, laptop open, watching her professional network slowly distance themselves from her online presence. I know what you're doing. The company stuff, the airport thing, all of it. I have no idea what you mean. I've been home recovering, just like you suggested. Don't lie to me. I'm not stupid. No, but you were careless. Did you really think you could destroy someone's life without consequences? A long pause. I could hear Derek in the background, his voice high and panicked. What do you want? She finally asked. I want you to understand what it feels like to have your world collapse while you're powerless to stop it. I can fix this. I can pay back the money, explain everything. Too late. You made your choice in that hospital room. I hung up and immediately called Alec. She's scared, I told him. Good. But Felix, you need to be careful. Desperate people do stupid things. Let them. I'm 3 steps ahead. That afternoon, I received an unexpected visitor. Janet, the nurse from the hospital, knocked on my door with a concerned expression. I probably shouldn't be here, she said, but I thought you should know. Your wife came to the hospital asking about you. She seemed unstable. What did she want? Information about your condition, your treatment, anything that might help her case. I told her patient confidentiality prevented me from discussing your care. Thank you. There's something else. She wasn't alone. There was a woman with her, well-dressed, professional-looking. They seemed to be planning something. This was new information. Maren working with someone else meant the stakes were higher than I'd thought. Did you catch the other woman's name? Nadia something. She had business cards from your wife's company. Nadia, Maren's supposed best friend from work, the one who'd been encouraging her to live her best life and not settle for less than she deserved. I'd always found her fake and manipulative, but I'd assumed she was just a bad influence. Now I wondered if there was more to it. I spent the evening researching Nadia's background. She was Maren's colleague in the HR department, but she'd been there longer and should have been promoted to director instead of Maren. That promotion had happened 3 years ago, right around the time I'd been consulted on a tech upgrade for their company. A tech upgrade that had resulted in several employees being terminated for inefficiency. Employees whose termination recommendations had come from my analysis, including Nadia's assistant and closest ally. The pieces started falling into place. This wasn't just about Maren's affair with Derek. This was about revenge, Nadia's revenge against me, using Maren as the weapon. I called Alec immediately. "We have a bigger problem," I said, and explained what I'd discovered. That changes things. If Nadia's been manipulating this situation from the beginning, she's probably got contingency plans we haven't considered. Then we need to get ahead of her. What are you thinking? I'm thinking it's time to go public. The next morning, I updated my blog with a new post titled, "When Friends Become Enemies." I detailed the pattern of manipulation I'd uncovered, the way trusted colleagues could poison relationships from within. Again, no names, but enough detail that anyone familiar with the situation would understand. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Comments poured in from people sharing similar experiences. The post was shared across social media platforms. Local news outlets picked up the story as an example of workplace toxicity and its impact on families. By noon, Maren was calling again. "You're destroying everything I've worked for," she said. "I'm just telling the truth." If the truth is destroying your career, maybe you should examine your choices. Nadia says you're obsessed, that you're having some kind of breakdown. Nadia's been playing you from the beginning, but you're too arrogant to see it. That's ridiculous. She's my friend. Your friend who convinced you to have an affair? Your friend who encouraged you to abandon your husband? Your friend who's probably documenting everything for her own protection? Another pause. Shorter this time. You don't know what you're talking about. Ask her about the promotion she didn't get. Ask her about the employees who were terminated based on my recommendations. Ask her who really benefits from your downfall. I hung up and waited. It didn't take long. Derek called 20 minutes later. Maren's freaking out. She thinks Nadia's been recording their conversations. Smart woman. Too bad she figured it out too late. Look, this has gone far enough. What do you want? Money? An apology? Just name your price. I want justice, and I want you to understand that actions have consequences. We made a mistake, okay? We're sorry. No, you're not sorry. You're caught. There's a difference. That evening, I received a text from an unknown number. Back off, or you'll regret it. I showed it to Rowan, who'd stopped by to check on my recovery. Sounds like a threat, he said. Sounds like desperation. I traced the number through a reverse lookup service. It belonged to Nadia. Perfect. Now I had evidence of harassment to add to my growing collection of documentation. I was starting to understand why Maren had been so confident in her plan. She hadn't been acting alone, and she hadn't been the mastermind. Nadia had been pulling the strings, using Maren's dissatisfaction and Derek's weakness to orchestrate my destruction. But they'd underestimated me. They thought I was just a passive victim, someone who would collapse under pressure and disappear quietly. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Wednesday brought an unexpected development. Maren showed up at my house unannounced, looking haggard and desperate. Her usually perfect appearance was disheveled, wrinkled clothes, smeared makeup, hair that hadn't been styled in days. "We need to talk," she said when I opened the door. "I thought we'd covered everything." "Please, Felix, 5 minutes." Against my better judgment, I let her in. She sat on the edge of the couch like she was ready to run, her hands shaking as she lit a cigarette, a habit she'd supposedly quit years ago. "Nadia's gone crazy," she said without preamble. "Define crazy." "She's been recording everything. Our conversations, our meetings, even private calls with Derek. She says it's for protection, but I think she's planning to use it against us. Against you, you mean? I'm not part of your conspiracy. Maren took a long drag from her cigarette. She showed me some of the recordings. Things I said about you, about our marriage, about my plans. If those get out, your career will be over. Your reputation will be destroyed. Derek will probably run back to his wife. I shrugged. Sounds like a problem you created. She wants money. A lot of money. She says if we don't pay, she'll release everything to the media. How much? 200,000 each. I whistled low. That's ambitious. Where does she expect you to get that kind of cash? She knows about your consulting business, about the assets you've been hiding. Maren's eyes were red-rimmed and desperate. She wants us to work together to pay her off. Interesting proposal. What makes you think I'd help you? Because if this comes out, it'll destroy both of us. Your business reputation, your professional relationships, everything will be tainted by the scandal. She wasn't wrong. Public humiliation cut both ways, and my clients valued discretion above all else. But she was also missing something crucial. You're assuming I care about any of that more than I care about justice. Felix, please. I know I hurt you, but we can fix this. We can go back to how things were. No, we can't. You made sure of that. I stood up, signaling the conversation was over. But I'll think about your proposal. After she left, I called Alec and explained the situation. It's a trap, he said immediately. Either they're working together to extort money from you, or Nadia's playing a deeper game. I know, but it's also an opportunity. What are you thinking? I'm thinking it's time to bring everyone together for a final conversation. That evening, I sent identical messages to Maren, Derek, and Nadia. Saturday, 2 p.m., Lakeview Cabin. Come alone. We'll settle this once and for all. The cabin belonged to a client who owed me a favor. It was isolated, private, and equipped with security cameras that I'd helped him install. Perfect for what I had in mind. Rowan helped me prepare. We tested the recording equipment, positioned cameras at strategic angles, and made sure everything was working properly. You sure about this? He asked as we finished setting up. They want to play games. I'm going to show them what a real game looks like. Saturday afternoon arrived gray and overcast, with the kind of persistent drizzle that made everything look bleak. I arrived at the cabin early and did a final check of the equipment. Maren showed up first, driving a rental car and looking nervously around the empty parking area. Derek arrived 10 minutes later in a different car, clearly trying to maintain some pretense of separation. Nadia was last, pulling up in a black sedan with tinted windows. They gathered on the cabin's front porch, whispering among themselves like conspirators, which I supposed they were. I opened the door before they could knock. Come in. Let's get this over with. The cabin's main room was rustic but comfortable, with a stone fireplace and large windows overlooking the lake. I'd arranged chairs in a semicircle facing the couch where I sat. This is cozy, Derek said nervously. Shut up, Nadia snapped. She was a small woman with sharp features and intelligent eyes that missed nothing. Felix, I assume you've considered our proposal? I have. But first, I want to understand the full scope of your operation. It's not an operation. It's a simple business arrangement. Really? Because from where I sit, it looks like an elaborate revenge scheme orchestrated by someone with a personal grudge. Nadia's expression didn't change, but I saw Maren and Derek exchange glances. I don't know what you're talking about, Nadia said. Sure you do. This whole thing started 3 years ago, when you didn't get the promotion you thought you deserved. When my consulting work resulted in your ally being terminated, you've been planning this ever since. You're paranoid. Am I? Then explain why you encouraged Maren's affair with Derek. Explain why you helped her plan the perfect timing for maximum damage. Explain why you've been documenting everything from the beginning. The room fell silent, except for the rain pattering against the windows. You used them, I continued, looking at Maren and Derek. You manipulated their weaknesses to get revenge against me, and now you're trying to profit from the chaos you created. Prove it, Nadia said. I smiled and pulled out my phone. I don't have to prove it. You're going to confess. Like heck I am. You already did. I pressed play on a voice recording. Nadia's voice filled the room, crystal clear. Felix roared, destroyed my career, and I'm going to destroy his marriage. Maren's too stupid to see she's being used, but that's not my problem. The recording continued for several minutes, documenting Nadia's manipulation and blackmail schemes in her own words. How did you... Nadia started. Your threatening text the other night? I traced it back to you, then used some social engineering to access your voicemail. You really should use better passwords. Maren was staring at Nadia with growing horror. You recorded me. You recorded all of us. For protection, Nadia said defensively. For blackmail, I corrected. And for revenge. Derek stood up abruptly. I'm leaving, this is insane. Sit down, I said calmly. We're not finished. You can't keep us here. I'm not keeping you anywhere. But if you leave now, those recordings of your affair, all of them, will be delivered to your wife, your employer, and every news outlet in the city by tomorrow morning. He sat down. Now then, I continued, let's discuss consequences. The atmosphere in the cabin had shifted from tense negotiation to barely controlled panic. Maren was chain-smoking, Derek kept checking his phone like he was expecting rescue, and Nadia sat rigid in her chair, calculating her next move. What do you want? Nadia asked finally. I want the truth, all of it, on the record. And if we refuse? I gestured toward the laptop I'd set up on the coffee table. Then I start uploading. Your company's board of directors gets the recordings of you planning to blackmail employees. The local news gets the story of an HR executive abandoning her husband after surgery. Derek's wife gets a detailed timeline of his affair, complete with photos. You're bluffing, Derek said, but his voice lacked conviction. Am I? I opened the laptop and showed them the screen. Email drafts were already prepared, complete with recipients and attachments. One click sends everything. Maren stubbed out her cigarette with shaking hands. What kind of truth do you want? Start with the promotion. Tell me how this really began. She glanced at Nadia, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. 3 years ago, when I got promoted to HR director, Nadia felt she deserved the position. She'd been there longer, had more experience. But you got it instead because of your networking skills, I said, and because the company wanted a younger face for their diversity initiatives. Yes. And Nadia blamed me because my consulting work had eliminated her support network. Another nod. So she decided to destroy my marriage as payback. How long did it take her to convince you to contact Derek? 6 months, Maren whispered. She kept saying I deserved better, that you were holding me back professionally. And Derek? How did he fit into this? Derek finally spoke up. Nadia reached out to me first, said Maren was unhappy, that she needed a friend. She arranged our first meeting. At the charity gala last spring, I said. I remember. You were so surprised to see him there. It wasn't a coincidence, Maren admitted. The pieces were falling into place perfectly. Nadia had orchestrated everything. The affair, the timing, even the cruelty of Maren's hospital room betrayal. She'd manipulated them both, feeding their weaknesses and guiding their actions toward maximum damage. The recordings, I said to Nadia. When did you start making them? From the beginning, she said defiantly. I needed insurance. You needed blackmail material. This was never about helping Maren find happiness. This was about destroying me and profiting from the wreckage. You ruined my career. You cost me everything I'd worked for. I provided data analysis. Your company made the personnel decisions. Your recommendations got my people fired. Your people were underperforming. The data didn't lie. Neither do these recordings, she shot back, pulling out her phone. I've got hours of Maren talking about how much she hates you, how bored she is, how she wishes you'd just disappear. You want the truth? Your wife can't stand you. The words hit harder than I expected, but I kept my expression neutral. And you exploited that dissatisfaction for your own agenda. I gave her permission to be honest about her feelings. You gave her a weapon and pointed her at my heart. The rain outside was getting heavier, drumming against the windows like an irregular heartbeat. The cabin felt smaller with each passing minute, the walls closing in as the full scope of the conspiracy became clear. Here's what's going to happen, I said. Nadia, you're going to resign from your position and delete every recording you've made. If you ever contact Maren or Derek again, if you ever try to profit from this situation, those voicemails of you planning blackmail go straight to the police. You can't prove anything. I can prove enough. Corporate espionage, extortion, harassment. I've got a compelling case. I turned to Derek. You're going home to your wife. You're going to confess everything and hope she's more forgiving than I am. If I see you anywhere near Maren again, your employer gets a detailed report about your ethics violations. Derek nodded miserably. And Maren. I looked at my wife, my soon-to-be ex-wife, with a mixture of pity and contempt. You're going to file for divorce and accept whatever settlement I offer. No alimony, no claims on my business, nothing. You made your choice. Felix, please. No. You don't get to apologize now. You don't get to claim you were manipulated. You're an adult who made adult decisions. Live with the consequences. Nadia stood up abruptly. This isn't over. Yes, it is. Unless you want to explain to a jury why you recorded private conversations without consent. She stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Derek followed a moment later, mumbling something about needing to get home. Maren remained in her chair, tears streaming down her face. I never meant for it to go this far, she said, but you did mean for it to go somewhere. You meant to hurt me, to abandon me when I was vulnerable. You meant to take everything and leave me with nothing. I was unhappy, so you decided to make me miserable too. She had no answer for that. The insurance money, I said. The $45,000 for my surgery. You're going to pay it back. I don't have... Figure it out. Sell your jewelry, liquidate your retirement account, ask your parents for a loan. I don't care how you do it, but you're going to make it right. She nodded through her tears. And Maren, next time you decide to destroy someone's life, make sure you're smart enough to finish the job. Because I'm not. She left without another word, and I was alone in the cabin with the sound of rain and the satisfaction of a plan perfectly executed. But as I packed up the recording equipment, I realized this wasn't quite finished. There was still one more move to make. Sunday morning brought unexpected sunshine, as if the storm had washed away all the ugliness and left the world clean. I sat on my back porch with coffee and my laptop, planning the final phase of my campaign. The recordings from yesterday's cabin confrontation were damning, but they were also private. What I needed was something public, something that would ensure Maren, Derek, and Nadia faced social consequences for their actions. The opportunity came from an unexpected source, the annual Riverside Community Festival, scheduled for next weekend. It was a big event that drew thousands of people from across the city, including many of Maren's professional contacts and social circle. I'd been invited to speak about small business technology solutions, a boring topic that usually drew a modest crowd. But this year, I had something more interesting to share. I spent the week crafting my presentation. Officially, it was about digital ethics in the modern workplace. Unofficially, it was a masterclass in public humiliation disguised as professional development. Rowan helped me set up the audio-visual equipment on Saturday afternoon. The festival organizers had given me a prime-time slot on the main stage, right after the mayor's welcome speech and before the evening entertainment. "You sure about this?" Rowan asked as we tested the microphones. They wanted to play in public. Now they get to face the consequences in public. The crowd was larger than expected. Nearly 500 people gathered in front of the stage. I spotted Maren near the back, trying to look invisible behind sunglasses and a baseball cap. Derek was nowhere to be seen, but Nadia stood near the front with a group of their colleagues, probably hoping to do damage control. I began with standard material about workplace technology and digital security. The audience was politely attentive, but not particularly engaged. Then I shifted gears. But technology isn't just about efficiency, I said. It's about ethics. It's about how we treat each other in an interconnected world. I clicked to my next slide. Case study: when digital betrayal becomes personal. Recently, I experienced firsthand how technology can be weaponized by people we trust, how private communications can be used for manipulation and blackmail, how social media can be used to coordinate deception. The audience was paying attention now. I saw Maren shift uncomfortably in her position. Let me tell you a story about a woman who spent months planning to destroy her husband's life while he was recovering from emergency surgery. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Several people turned to look at Maren, who was now visibly panicking. This woman used company resources to coordinate an affair. She manipulated financial accounts to leave her spouse helpless and alone. She even destroyed his communication devices to prevent him from seeking help. I clicked to the next slide, which showed a graph of financial transactions, all public record, nothing confidential, but damning in its timing and scope. But here's where it gets interesting. This woman wasn't acting alone. She was being manipulated by a colleague who saw an opportunity for revenge and profit. Now I had the crowd's complete attention. Phones were coming out. People were recording. This was exactly what I wanted. The colleague had been secretly recording private conversations for months, planning to use them for blackmail. She orchestrated the affair, encouraged the betrayal, and then tried to profit from the chaos she created. I saw Nadia pushing through the crowd, trying to reach the stage. Security stopped her. I'd briefed them about potential disruptions. And the lover? He was just a useful idiot, manipulated by both women for their own purposes. A weak man who abandoned his family for the promise of someone else's money. The crowd was buzzing now, phones everywhere, social media posts flying. This would be online within minutes and viral within hours. Now, you might ask, why am I sharing this personal story at a community technology event? I paused for effect, scanning the crowd until my eyes found Maren. She was frozen in place, trapped between the crowd and the parking lot. Because these people thought they were so smart, so sophisticated in their use of technology for deception, but they forgot the most important rule of the digital age: everything leaves a trail. I clicked to a slide showing a network diagram of digital connections, emails, texts, social media interactions, financial transactions. It looked like a spider web with 3 people caught in the center. Every lie they told was documented. Every secret meeting was recorded. Every financial manipulation was tracked. They built the evidence of their own destruction. The crowd erupted in applause. Several people were shouting questions, but I raised my hand for silence. The moral of this story isn't about revenge. It's about accountability. In our interconnected world, actions have consequences. Betrayal has costs. And sometimes, the people you think you're deceiving are actually 3 steps ahead. More applause, louder this time. I saw Maren finally break free from the crowd and run toward the parking lot. Nadia had given up trying to reach the stage and was arguing with someone on her phone. "Thank you for your attention," I concluded. "Remember, in the digital age, the truth always comes out. The only question is whether you'll be on the right side of it when it does." I walked off the stage to a standing ovation. By the time I reached the parking lot, Maren's rental car was gone, and Nadia was nowhere to be seen. My phone started buzzing immediately. Text messages, voicemails, social media notifications. The story was spreading faster than I'd anticipated. Local news outlets picked it up within hours. Tech consultant exposes workplace conspiracy at community event. The video clips were everywhere: Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube. Digital betrayal started trending. By Sunday morning, Derek had called 6 times, each message more desperate than the last. Nadia's company issued a statement about investigating allegations of employee misconduct. Maren's phone number had been disconnected. I spent the day monitoring the fallout from my porch, watching my former wife's carefully constructed life crumble in real time. Her LinkedIn profile disappeared. Her social media accounts went private. Her professional reputation was finished. It was better than I'd imagined. Monday brought the final confirmation of victory. Nadia had been terminated for ethics violations. Derek's wife had filed for divorce and was seeking full custody of their children. And Maren had transferred $45,000 to my account with a note that simply said, "It's over." I deposited the check and closed my laptop. The old Felix would have felt guilty about the destruction I'd caused, but the old Felix was gone, replaced by someone harder and smarter and infinitely more dangerous. They'd tried to destroy me when I was vulnerable. Instead, they'd created a monster. And monsters, as any good consultant knows, are very good at solving problems. The game was over. I'd won.